Hi all, this is regarding the NCRT. So we are just picking up the class 7th now. So let us see the introduction contents of the chapter. So we have 10 chapters. So where we have tracing changes through 1,000 years, new kings and kingdoms, the Delhi Sultans, the Mughal Empire, rulers and the building, towns, traders and craft person, tribes, nomads and settled communities, devotional paths to the divine, the making of regional cultures, 18th century political formation. So this is the first chapter which talks about the tracing changes through 1,000 years. Take a look at the map 1 and 2 made. Map 1 was made in 9154 CE by the Arab geographer Al-Idris. The section reproduced here is a detail of the Indian subcontinent from his larger map of the world. Map 2 was made in 1720s by the French cartographer. The two maps are quite different even though they are of the same area. In Al-Idris map, South India is where we would expect to find North India, and Sri Lanka is the island at the top. Place names are marked in Arabic. So they basically say that there are two maps. So this is the first map, and that was the first map, and this is the second map. So and there are some well-known names like place names are marked in Arabic, and there are some well-known names like Kanuj in Uttar Pradesh, Kunja. Map 2 was made nearly 600 years after Map 1, during which time formation about the subcontinent had changed considerably. This map seems more familiar to us, and the coastal areas is particularly are surprisingly detailed. The map was used by European sailors and merchants on their voyage. Equal important in the fact that the signs of cartographer different in the two periods. When historians read document, map and text from the past, they have to be sensitive to the different historical background, the context in which information about the past was produced. New and old terminologies. In the context in which information is produced, change with time. What about language and meaning? Historical records exist in a variety of language which have changed considerably over the years. Medieval Persians, for example, is different from modern Persian. The difference is not just with regards to the grammar and vocabulary. The meaning of words also change over time. Take Take the term Hindustan for example. Today we understand it is India, the modern nation state. When the term was used in 13th century by the Minhaj-i-Siraj, a chronicle who wrote in Persian, he meant the area of Punjab, Haryana and the land between the Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in political sense for lands that were a part of dominions of the Delhi Sultan. The area included in the term shifted with the extent of the Sultan, but the term never included South India. By contrast, in early 16th century, Babur used Hindustan to describe the geography, the fauna and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. As we will see later in this chapter, this was somewhat similar to the way the 14th century poet Amir Khusro, 14th century poet poet Amir Khusro used the word Hind. While the idea of geographical and cultural entity like India did exist, the term Hindustan did not carry the political and national meanings which we associate with it today. Historians today have to be careful about the term they use because they meant different things in the past. For example, a simple term like foreigners, it is used today to mean someone who is not an Indian. The medieval period, a foreigner use was an stranger who appeared, say, in a given village, someone who was not a part of the society or culture. In Hindi, the term Pardesi might be used to describe such a person and a Persian Ajnabi. A city dribbler therefore might have regarded the forest dribblers as a foreigner, but two peasants living in the same village were not foreigners to each other, even though they may have had different religion or caste backgrounds. Historians and their resource. Historians use different type of resource to learn about the past depending upon this period of their study and the nature of their investigation. Last year, for example, you read about rulers of the Gupta dynasty and Harshavardhana. In this book, we will read about the following 1000 years from roughly 1700 to 1750. You will notice some continuity in the source used by historians for the study of this period. This they stay rely on coins, inscription, architecture, and textual records for information, but there is also considerable discontinuity. The number and variety of textual records increased dramatically during this period. They slowly displaced other types of available information. Though this period paper gradually became cheaper and more widely available, people used it to write holy texts, chronicles of rulers, letters and teachings of saints, petitions and judicial records, and for registers of accounts and taxes. Manuscripts were collected by wealthy people, rulers, monasteries and temples. They were placed in libraries and archives. Archives, a place where documents and manuscripts are stored. Today, all the national and state government have archives where they keep all their old official records and transition. The manuscript and document provide a lot of details information to the historians, but they are also difficult to use. There was no printing press in those days, so scribbles copied manually by hand. If you had ever copied a friend's homework, you would know that there is not a simple exercise. Sometimes you cannot read your friend's handwriting and are forced to guess what is written. As a result, there are some small but significant difference in your copy of your friend's work. Manuscripts copying is somewhat similar. Scripts copied manuscripts, they also introduce small changes, a word here, a sentence here. These small differences grew over centuries of copying until manuscripts of same text became substantially different from one another. This is a serious problem because we rarely find the original manuscript of the author today. We are totally dependent upon the copies made by later scripts. As a result, historians have to read different manuscript versions of the same text to guess what the author had originally written. On occasions, authors revise their chronicles at different times. The 14th century chronicle Ziauddin Barani wrote his chronicle first in 1356 and another version 2 years later. The two differ from each other, but historians did not know how the existence of the first version until 1960. It remained lost in large library collections. Okay, here is something about the handwritings. Different kind of handwriting could make the reading of Persian and Arabic difficult. The Nastaliq style on the left is cursive and easy to read. The Shishkasti on the right is denser and more difficult. New social and political group. The study of 1,000 years between 700 and 1050 is a huge challenge to historians, largely because of the scale and variety of development that have occurred over the period. At different moments in this period, new technology made their appearance, like the Persian wheel in irrigation. Okay, this is talking about the 700 and 1050. Okay, so wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in weaving, and the firearm in combat. New foods and beverages arrived in the subcontinent: potato, corn, chili, tea, and coffee. Remember that all these innovations, new technology, and crops came along with people who brought other ideas with them as well. As a result, this was a period of economical, political, social, and cultural change. Okay. This was also a period of great mobility. Group of people traveled long distance in search of opportunity. The subcontinent held immense wealth and the possibility for people to carve a fortune. One group of people who became important in this period were the Rajputs, a name derived from Rajputras, the son of the ruler. Between the 8th and 14th century, the term was applied more generally to a group of warriors who claimed Kshatriya caste status. The term included not just rulers and chieftains, but also soldiers and commanders who served in the armies of different monarchs all over the subcontinent. A chivalric code of conduct, extreme valor, and a great sense of loyalty were the qualities attributed to Rajputs, but these their poets and bards. Other groups of people such as Marathas, Sikhs, Jats, Ahoms, and Kayasths also used the opportunity of the age to become politically important. Caste and tribal secretaries. Okay. Mm. Throughout this period, there was a gradually clearing of forests and extension of agriculture, a change faster and more complete in more areas than in others. Changes in their habitat forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Others started tilling the land and became peasants. These new peasants groups gradually began to influence by regional market chieftains, priests, monasteries, and temple. They became a part of large complex society and were required to pay tax and offer goods and services to local lords. As a result, significant economic and social difference emerged amongst peasants. Some possessed more productive productive land, others also kept cattle, and some combined artisanal work with agricultural activity during the lean season. As society became more differentiated, people were grouped into jatis or subcaste and ranked on the basis of their backgrounds and their occupation. Ranks were not fixed permanently and varied according to the power, influence, and resources controlled by the member of the jati. The status of some jati could vary from area to area. Jatis frame their own rule and regulation to manage the conduct of their member. These regulations were enforced by an assembly of elders described in some areas as the Jati Panchayat. But Jatis were also required to follow the rules of their village. Several villages were governed by the chieftains. Together they were only one small unit of a state. Region and empire. Large states like those of Cholas, Tughlaqs or Mughals encompassed many regions. Sanskrit Prashasti, praising the Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban, explained that he was the ruler of the vast empire that stretched from Bengal in the east to Ghazni in the Afghanistan in the west and included all the South India. People of different regions governed Andhra, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra and Gujarat apparently fled before his army. I'm just trying to look into the map. Regarding these are exaggerated claims of conquest. At the time, they tried to understand why rulers kept claiming to have control over different parts of the subcontinent. So, language and region. Okay, in 1318, the poet Amir Khusro noted that there was a different language in every region of this land. Amir Khusro went on explaining that in contrast to these languages, there was Sanskrit, which did not belong to any region. It was an old language and common people do not know it, only the Brahmins do. By 700, many regions already possessed distinct geographical dimension and their own language and cultural characteristics. We'll read this in chapter 9. They were also associated with specific ruling dynasty. There were considerably conflict between these states. Occasionally, dynasty like Chola, Khalji, Tughlaqs and Mughals were able to build an empire that was pan-regional, spanning diverse regions. Not all these empires were equally stable or successful. Compare, for example, table 1 in chapter 3 and 4. Why was the duration of rulers of the Khalji and Mughal dynasty, where the Mughal empire declined in the 18th century? It led to the re-emerge of regional state, but years of imperial pan-regional rulers had altered the characters of the region. Across most of the subcontinent, the region were left with the legacy of the big and small state that had ruled over them. This was apparent in the emergence of many distinct and shared traditions. In the realms of governance, the management of the economy, elites, culture, and languages. Though the 1000 year between 700 and 1750, the character of the different region did not grow in isolation. This region felt the impact of larger pan-regional force of integration without every quite losing their distinctiveness. Old and new religion. The 1000 years of history that were the 1000 years of history that we are exploring witnesses major development in religious traditions. People believe in the divine was sometimes deeply personal, but more usually it was collective. Collective belief in a supernatural agency region was often closely connected with the social and economic organization of local communities. As the social worlds of this group altered, so too did their belief. It was during this period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. This included the worship of new deities, the construction of temples by royalty, and the growing importance of Brahmins, the priests, as dominant groups in society. Their knowledge of Sanskrit text earned the Brahmins a lot of respect in society. Their dominant position was consolidated by the support of their patrons, new rulers searching for prestige. One of the major development of this period was the emergence of the idea of bhakti, of a loving personal deity that devotees who could reach without the aid of priest or elaborate rituals. So we'll be reading this in chapter 8. Okay. So this was also the period when new religion appeared in the subcontinent. Merchants and migrants first brought the teachings of Holy Quran to India in 17th century. Okay, Muslims regard the Quran as their holy book and accept the sovereignty of the one God. Allah, whose love, mercy, and bounty embrace all those who believe in Him. I'm extremely sorry for that. Without regard to social background. Many rulers were patrons of Islam, and the ulam learned theologians and jurists. And like Hinduism, Islam was interpreted in a variety of ways by the followers. There were the Shia Muslim who believed that the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali was the legitimate leader of the Muslim community, and the Sunni Muslim who accepted the authority of the early leaders of the community and the succeeded caliphs. There were also important difference between the various schools of law, Hanfi and Shafi, mainly inland, and in theological and mystic tradition. Thinkers about time and historical periods. Historians do not see time just as a passing of hour, day or years as on clock or calendar. Time also reflects changes in social and economic organization, in the persistence and transformation of ideas and beliefs. The study of time is made somewhat easier by dividing the past into large segment periods that possess shared characteristics. In the middle of the 19th century, British historians divided the history of India into three periods: Hindu, Muslim, and British. This division was based on the idea that the region of ruler was the only important historical changes, and that there were no other significant developments in the economy, society, or culture. Such a division also ignored the rich diversity of the subcontinent. Few historians follow this periodization today. Most look to economic and social factors to characterize the major element of different movements of the past. The historians who read last year included a wide range of early society, hunters, gatherers. Okay, this is in the 6th standard book. Early farmers, people living in town, village, and early empire and kingdom. The historians who will be studying this year are also described as medieval, who will find out more about the spread of peasant society, the rise of regional and imperial state formation, sometime at the cost of pastoral and forest people, the development of Hinduism and Islam as major religion, and the arrival of European trading companies. Those thousand these 1,000 years of Indian history witnesses considerable change. After all, the 16th and 18th century were quite different from the 8th or 11th. Therefore, describing the entire period as one historical unit is not without its problem. Moreover, the medieval period is often contrasted with the modern period. Modernity carries with it a sense of material progress and intellectual advancement. This seems to suggest that the medieval period was lacking in any change whatsoever, but of course, we know this was not the case. During this 1,000 years, the society of subcontinent were transformed often, and economics sorry economies in several regions reached a level of prosperity that attracted the interest of European trading companies. As you read this book, look out for signs of change and the historical processes at work. Also, whenever you can, compare what you read in this book with the what you read in the last year book. Look at the chance. Okay, we have to compare and see. Now we have completed this unit. So overall, what it talks about is about the tracing of the changes throughout 1,000 years. So we saw about the maps, okay, and the new technology new terminologies, okay, Hindustan, how it came and who wrote it and all those stuff, and the source of the historian. So the manuscript and how they preserved, how the printing came into the rule, and the handwriting, about the handwriting we spoke, and new social and political groups. So the introduction of the irrigation wheel in irrigation, spinning wheels, etc. And we saw about the jati and subjatis, how it emerged, and region. We saw about also the region and the empire. So, and also new and new, old and new religions. So we spoke about the Sanskrit and idea of bhakti, from where it originated. Thinkers about the past. Okay, so we saw how the thinkers thought in the past and in the present, and difference in, like, we mainly saw the there are, how did Britishers come to India, okay, during which period. Mainly it is in medieval, only so much we saw about that. So, and basically what I want to do is, this all answers I want to do it in other video, so we'll just take this chapter in the next session. Thank you.